Hey, it's Johara. Welcome back to my channel, to the Witchy Reader. So, um, I'm going to be talking about Seekers. Is that much of a surprise? Probably not. So, I've been talking about for a little while now that I've been procrastinating on doing, just because I feel like I'm afraid it's gonna be kind of a long video. Is a new series on my channel where each series I talk about underrated series is. And these might get a little spoiler, so there's your warning. But uh, this will be episode 1, and the first one I'm doing is Seekers. Obviously, I'm going to be doing Seekers Return to the Wild for episode 2 next. Um, because there's 12 books, so I'm splitting it into, and I think it'll be easier that way. So I'm talking about the first Seekers arc in this one, and so the first book is called The Quest Begins, and basically in this book, um, it kind of starts off slow because it's trying to show you how each of the main characters are going about how their lives are um, before, because they all end up alone before they find each other. And so it's kind of showing you how they got alone and stuff beforehand. Um, so I've mentioned before that Khalik and Toklo are the ones that have been through the most out of the main characters, though I do think Khalik has been through a little bit more. Um, but that wasn't always the case because at the beginning Toklo did have the harder life, but then it changed and Khalik ended up having the harder life for a while. Um, but So the four main characters are Khalik, Toklo, Lusa, and Udrak. Udrak isn't introduced to the middle of this book because he doesn't even get his own POV chapter until book 3 or 4. Which one is it? I think it's 4. I might be wrong, but I think it's 4. Okay. Because when he does get his first POV chapter, it's the very first chapter of the book. So yeah, okay, book 4 is when he gets his first POV chapter, which sucks because he's my second favorite character and deserves a lot more love than he got. But so first, plus you're not supposed to really know about Udrak's past because not even Udrak knows anything about his past. It's a long story. Udrak is a complicated character, but so Lusa lives in what they call a bear bowl, which is basically their version of the zoo. They call it bear bowl. One thing I love about this is the fact that the authors really get into the characters, and they like bears. They don't know that we're called humans, so they call us flat faces because we have flat faces. Then there's roads. They call black paths. Railroad roads they call silver paths, and the trains on them they call fire snakes. Uh, and I really love how they did that. But most wild bears don't know that bear bowls exist. Lucy had to explain it a lot when she talked about her past and where she grew up. I had to explain what a bear bowl is, and everyone always thought it was weird and crazy and didn't even know if it actually existed, despite the fact that it does. And she grew up in a happy life. But she was the only bear there that wanted to know what the outside world was like. Most of the other bears were comfortable because they didn't have to take care of themselves, and these flat faces took care of for them, and they were relaxed and they had an easy life. But Lucy was so curious about the wild that she dreamt of going there. Her dad was actually from the wild. She was born in the bear bowl, but her dad was from the wild. So he so they went to but you know Flatfaces had grabbed him and brought them there, um, and that's where he made his family. Um, and then Lusa and Toklo's stories in the first book kind of intertwined, because so I'm gonna explain a little about Toklo's past before I get more into Lusa's, because to understand how she escaped the Bear you need to know more about Toklo's past. Toklo's past, his mom was kind of neglective because his little brother was really sick and weak, so she was always so worrying about him, and everything was always so serious, which is understandable, which explains why Toklo ends up becoming very serious himself. But um, so she was just always hovering over Toby and kind of neglecting Toklo. Um, and then one day Toby died, and um, his mom, what's his mom's name again? Oka. Oka was very upset, and she decided that she couldn't lose another cub, because you do end up finding out at one point that she had another litter of cubs before Toklo and Toby, and they died too. And then she was sure that Toklo was going to end up dying, and she didn't want to watch another cub die, so she chased him away. And and then you get back to Lusa, and you find out that, and then Oka comes in because Flatface ended up finding her and brought her, and she was like across from Lusa, and Lusa was very curious about her, so she would keep talking to her about her to her, and Oka told her about Toklo, how she regrets what she did, how she just wants to make sure he's okay, and she ended up dying there. But before she did, Lusa promised that she would find Toklo and make sure he's okay for her. And she did. She managed to escape and went to the wild. At the end of book 1 is when they meet, but it kind of leaves you at that cliffhanger of them meeting. But because in the middle of the book, Toklo met Udrak, and the two of them started getting close, and then Lusa came at the end, and then Kalik doesn't actually meet them until near the end of the second book. But Kalik, onto Kalik, my favorite character. She had a pretty much happy childhood at first. She It was her and her brother and her mother, and they lived on the ice. And Nisa kept saying how the ice was melting and they were gonna have to learn to live on land for a little while. She's lived on land before when the ice melted, but they haven't yet. They've only known the ice. So she would explain stuff that's on the land, and they're gonna have to, and there's no seals or anything they could eat. They would have to deal with grass or berries or stuff like that to live off of for a little while until they can return to the ice when it comes back. And Toklo and her brother Takik were very happy. And then they were trying to get to land when an orca came, and Nisa was she was swimming and dragging her kids one by one through the big gaps of water onto the next patch of ice until they can get to land. She did that with Kalik, and then she was going to go back for Takik when an orca attacked, and Kalik kept calling for her mom as she watched her mom die, and there's nothing she could do. And she died for Kalik, I think, because I think the orca was originally going for Kalik. I might be wrong about that, but and then there was like fog or something, so Takik couldn't see them, and Kalik and Takik couldn't get to each other, and Takik thought. We find out when Kalik finally reunites with Takik that he thought that both of them had died. He didn't think either one of them had lived. But so Kalik was all on her own after that. She just watched her mother die a violent death, and she has no idea where her brother is. But she gets back up and she decides to continue her the journey to land, because she thought if she could go around, she can fight Takik. It doesn't help work that way, but she does manage to keep going, and she goes through so much hell because despite all these characters go through a lot. Toklo and Kalik the most, but even though Toklo had a bad childhood to begin with, he met Udrak and Lusa pretty early. Kalik was on her own for so much of it, and one thing I like is that, I mean, they kind of later on, I swear, despite the fact that these are bears, I swear that Kalik was having a little bit of PTSD for something that happens at the end of this book, which I'll mention here in a minute. But so she was on her own, and there were so many times where she just wanted to give up because she didn't know she would ever find Takik. Her mother was dead. She was all alone, and because her mother was dead, she couldn't teach her how to survive on land. She could only deal with the things that her mother had taught her, but it was a but seeing it for yourself is a lot different than hearing about it. So she had to so she was on her own and for so long, and she had to learn how to live on land on her own, and she didn't have anyone to teach her, anyone to help her, and it was very sad. Back to Toklo. In the middle of this book, he meets Udrak. He actually met Udrak as, what was he at first? A flat face, I think. Because he's a shapeshifter. He can shapeshift into any animal or person, because he's been flat faces before. Um, and Toklo didn't want anything to do with Udrak at first because he was grumpy, he was alone, and he was miserable, and that doesn't really change, but he does have a lot of character development because even though his personality kind of stays the same, he truly grows to care about all these bears, and he thinks of them as his family, his friends, whatever, and he would die for them, he would fight for them. So but he didn't want anything to do with Udrak at first. He didn't want anything to do with Lusa at first. He didn't want anything to do with Kilik at first. Okay, he doesn't get along with them when he first meets them, but then he thinks of them as family. So yeah, but Udrak reminded him so much of Toby. He was little, he was alone, and so Toklo ended up deciding to let Udrak travel with him so that he's not alone, and because he couldn't save Toby, so he wanted to try to save Udrak. At the end of this book, Udrak had turned into, he can't really control his powers at first. Um, he turns into, what was it? It was a small animal, like a hare or something, rabbit, something like that. And then a black bear comes and tries to eat it, but then Toklo wouldn't let her because it was Udrak. And then Udrak changes back and it's like, Toklo, and then you find out the black bear is Lusa because she's like, "You're Toklo, and I'm Lusa. I came to find you," and that's kind of how the book ends. But then back to how Kilik's story ends in this book. Uh, she was grabbed by flatfaces and put into a metal bird, which is what they call planes, and she meets this white bear, like her, I almost said Nisa, no, that's her mom's name, Nanulak, no, Nanook, okay, Nanulak is a different character, so many characters, so many names, okay, Nanook, and, Nanook kind of ended up becoming like a mother figure for her, since she didn't really have anyone, she was alone, she was a cub, and, but then the metal plane, the metal bird crashes, and Kilik survives, but Nanook doesn't. And she watched Nanook die. You know, shortly after she watched her mother die. Um, and then what do you know? She's on her own again, and there's a few times where they see metal planes again, and you could tell, like, despite I don't care that she was a bear, she had PTSD. Okay, like every time she saw metal, I keep wanting to call it metal plane, which is technically what it's called, but I'm trying to speak seekers talk. The metal bird. She saw every time she sees a metal bird after this, she freezes. She kind of panics, and I don't care what anyone says. She was having PTSD. I don't know if bears can have PTSD, but she was having PTSD. That was book one. Okay, next for book two, Great Bear Lake. So in this book, after Kilik, watches Nanook die, she eventually ends up realizing she has to go. She has to continue her journey, so she does. She keeps on going for her mission to save Takik. And you can see how drained she is in this book, how she just keeps she's on the verge of I almost said breaking down, which she kind of is there too, but of giving up. There's several times throughout this book where she's just ready to give up. She's done, she's had it, it's enough. She is all alone. She watched two people she cared about die already. She cannot find her brother to save the life of her, and she's in this unfamiliar land, in a place where she can barely live. She so yeah, I felt very bad for Kalik in this book. Um, but back to the others. Toklo does not want to hear Lusa's message, but Udrak thinks that Lusa finding them was a sign, so insists that she comes with them on their journey, and Toklo grudgingly agrees. And Lusa and Udrak begin to bond, which Toklo does not like, because Udrak is his friend, and he doesn't like Lusa bonding with him because he doesn't like any bear that's not a brown bear, which is how most brown bears feel. Though most brown bears don't even like other brown bears. But most bears don't like bears from other species. That's why whenever they were around other bears, uh, Kalik, Udrak, Toklo, and Lusa would always get so much heat for hanging out with each other instead of their own kind. But in this book, they're on this journey to Great Bear Lake. Obviously, that's in the title. And every year there's this longest day ceremony where the three types of bears, black, brown, and white, would um, um, be in this place. They're not allowed to cross each other's territories though, but they all are relatively nice to each other, as nice as they can be. And it's a day of peace and just so they can all pray to whatever spirits they pray to. That whatever they need comes back to them. Like the white bears are praying for the ice to return, the brown bears are praying for the fish to return, and I do not remember what the black bears are praying for. But yeah. Um so the three of them are heading there, and Kalik hears about it too, wherever she is, and she decides to head there too, because she's like, if all these bears are gathering there, then maybe Takik will be there too. So she even finds other bears to follow at one point to try to get her there, because she has no idea where she's going. She's on land for the first time in her life, and she's all alone. Um, so they all are getting there. Um, and they all reach there, and then Lusa decides to go to the black bear territory and hang out with black bears. But at this point, Toklo and Lusa had already bonded. They had gone close, and now he is sad that he might lose her to other black bears. Um, so Toklo and Udrak are in the brown bear territory, Lusa in the black bear territory, and at some point Kalik shows up and ends up in the white bear territory. And she does find Takik there, but he's not the bear she remembers. He's a jerk. He hangs out with these other bears, these other really jerky bears who steal food from other bears, because they think that that's the only way to survive in this world. And Kalik is very disappointed in Takik at that point. Um, and she feels so even more alone than she has over this past year. She feels like everything she's done to find her brother was for nothing, because now she doesn't even recognize him. Um, and Toklo decides to do this whole. There's this one bear. So earlier in book one, I forgot to mention right before Oka, abandons Toklo. This one mean bear tried to drown him, and Toklo ends up meeting that bear again. And there's this whole thing that the brown bears believe that if they go to this paw print island, which is a little bit of ways away from Great Bear Lake, that if one brown bear will go there and prove to the spirits that they can survive there by themselves for a certain amount of time, then the fish will return. So that one bear who tried to drown Toklo in book one was offered Toklo suggested Toklo just because he wanted to hurt Toklo. Like he really had no reason. He just wanted Toklo to fail. But Toklo ended up agreeing, leaving Udrak on his own, and Toklo went to Poprin Island. Um, and he at first liked it because he was like, "This is how bears should live, all by themselves with their territory." Um, until later on, because Lusa, so back at the Black Bear territory, Lusa ends up meeting some black bears she gets really close to, especially this one bear, Miki, and they get really close. And he shows her how to be a real wild black bear, because I mean she's still relatively new to the wild, and even when she was in the wild, she hung out with brown bears, so she's still learning a lot about being a real black wild bear. So but then Takik's friends kidnap Miki, hoping to do this to I don't really even remember their reason, to be honest. Like, I don't even think they had a good reason. Well, of course they didn't have a good reason, but um they kidnapped Miki, and then Kalik is angry at Takik at this point, and Lusa is desperate to save him. So she goes to Ujak and Toklo, and Toklo said that he can't go because he has to do this whole thing. And at this point, that's one bear that tried to drown him had swam over there to try to challenge him, but Toklo won, and now he feels like he's being a real brown bear. But then he realized how much he actually cares about his friends after Lusa left, all sad, and decides to go and help her. But after Lusa left, she meets Kalik. Kalik was like, I think Kalik saved Lusa because I think she was about to drown or something. Because polar bears are like the best swimmers. Um, or was it Lusa that saved Kalik? I don't remember. One of them saved the other, and then they formed an alliance to save Miki and stop Takik and his friends. And Toklo and Ujak end up coming to help, and the four of them worked together for the first time, and it was awesome. Takik ends up helping Kalik as well because he didn't think this was right, but he wasn't good at standing up to the leader, Salik. But they were able to save Miki, and at the end, Lusa and Kalik had gotten really close, even though they barely knew each other, and they decided to Lusa decided to stay with Toklo and Ujak instead of going with other black bears, and wanted Kalik to join her, and she agreed if Tiki can join because she just met her brother. She didn't want to lose him, and they end up agreeing as well. So off they go, and that's how book 2 ends. This becoming a very spoiler review. Okay, so book 3 is Smoke Mountain. I might try to not get too spoiler from now on because this is going to be a long video. This is going to be a lot of work. Okay. So in this book, they go to Smoke Mountain, which is supposed to be this very dangerous place. And a lot happens. No one likes Takik. Kalik keeps trying to stand up for him, but Takik's not making it easy for her. And Kalik gets really close to Lusa and Ujak and begins to get close to Toklo as well, because I mentioned how he is with when he first meets all of them. But Takik does end up leaving and wants Kalik to leave with him, but she doesn't want to because she finally found these people that she really cares about and she wants to be with them. So Takik leaves and Kalik returns to them, which makes Lusa very happy. And so they go on to Smoke Mountain. My mouth is really dry. But they run into danger after danger once they get there. Let's see, what dangers do they go to? They were running from some sort of like big flat face thing. I don't remember what it was, but it was, I think it's something to cut trees or something where you can like drive in there like with a big thing on. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't even know what it's called. But they were running from that at one point, and Kalik ended up saving Lusa, but Lusa got pretty badly hurt. But Kalik managed to save her, but barely. And then she couldn't. But then she couldn't like drag her by herself, so Toklo doubled back to help, and they were able to get them away. At one point, Lucy tries to run away because they were stuck in this cave for days and days because she was so badly injured and she slept a lot, and she tried to run away because she thought they'd be better off without her since she was so injured and could barely walk or anything right now. And Toklo stopped her and was like, "No, we love you, we need you. It won't be the same without you." And that's not exactly what he said because it's Toklo, but still, that's basically what it meant. And in this book, Toklo doesn't want to transform because whenever he transforms, he forgets who he is. He starts to become whatever he transformed into. He starts to feel what those creatures feel, get thoughts that those creatures think, and he doesn't want to transform because he's terrified of losing himself. He's afraid that there's been several times where he was gone for a long time and they couldn't find him because he transformed into something and he forgot that he's a bear. He forgot who he is and who his friends are. So he always has that battle with him, and he's terrified of transforming because he's terrified that if he does, he'll lose himself and he will be lost forever. Um, and then at one point, I think this is the book where Lusa. Okay, so Lusa and Udrak, they end up getting hurt. Um, don't get hurt. They don't get hurt, but I think they get attacked by Flatface or something, and then Toklo and Kleek risk everything to save them. But then they're all running from Flatfaces near the end of this book, and they all end up splitting up. And then Kleek, Lusa, and Udrak end up finding each other, but they can't find Toklo, and he gets attacked and grabbed by Flatfaces and put into a car, and then or Fire Beast, and then so the other bears end up having to chase the Fire Beast to find him, and but then the car ended up swerving or something and falls into a lake or river or ocean or something. It falls into water, and so Toklo's stuck and he's gonna drown. But then Kalik, Lusa, and Udrak were able to get him out and free him. Um, and by the end of this book, Toklo acknowledges that Kalik is now one of them, and they all finally leave Smoke Mountain, and that's how book number 3 ends. Now on to book 4, The Last Wilderness. So, I have notes for all of these as I was rereading them, and I don't have as many notes for this one. So these are the significant things that happened in this book. But Udrak gets really badly hurt. He had transformed into some sort of underwater creature like a fish or something, and ended up getting a fish hook stuck in his mouth, and it was really bad. So they managed to get Udrak transformed into a Flatface because there was a Flatface healer not too far away, and so they managed to get him to transform to Flatface so they could take him there and that they would help him, and they did. While he was there, Toklo decided that now that he knows Udrak will be okay, that he has to leave because at this point, he still really wants to be a brown bear because he thinks it's the only way for him to, he wants to be a true brown bear. After this is when he realizes he wants to be with his friends, though they all just split up in the very end, but he's not ready for that yet, none of them are. But, he leaves to go find his own territory to be a true brown bear and be alone. But while he's there, he misses his friends. He keeps thinking about his friends, and he realizes that he wants to be with them. But so much happens while he's gone. Kalik and Lusa are waiting for Udrak to be better and to be able to leave. But then someone comes, someone from like a big city and doesn't believe in their beliefs, and takes Udrak to a real hospital where he can actually get proper healing and medical attention, and takes him to in a metal bird. And then Lusa and Kalik want to follow him, but this is the first time you can see a little note of Kalik's PTSD. Later on, you see it's worse when they run into another metal bird. I don't remember if it's in this arc or if it's in the next arc, but at some point, I think it might be in the next arc, but she has some PTSD, but so they managed. So Lusa and Kalik decided they have to go find Udrak, and around the time Toklo decided he wants to go find his friends again. So Lusa and Kalik run to try to follow the direction the metal bird went into, because they know they have to save him one way or another. Toklo eventually finds them and finds out everything that happened while he was gone. And while this was happening, Udrak is still in Flatface form, is better and is doing better and is trying to escape so that he can go back to his friends. And he manages to climb out a window or something and then transform back into a bear, and he finds them. Or no, yeah, but they go into the hospital first as bears because they can't transform or anything. So they go into the hospital, just as Udrak's leaving. But the bears end up having to try to escape from the flat faces, and they do. And then they end up finding Udrak outside, and then they all have to run away from the flat faces. And I'm pretty sure that's how the book ends. The bears get away is how it ends. Okay, at the end of the book, they realize that they have to get past. They have to go through. Their journey is they have to go through ice. So this is where Kalik has to lead them because she's the only one that knows how to live on ice. And that's how book 4 ends. Book 5, Fire in the Sky. And now they are on ice. So in this book, Kalik is in charge, and that causes him and Toklo to butt heads a lot, because they both are a lot alike. They both are natural born leaders, and Toklo can be very hot headed, and he likes to be in charge. He likes to lead. He feels very protective of everyone. Okay, so this is a found family, as I told you, and I'm sure a lot of people talk about how in big friend groups there's like that mother figure and the father figure or whatever. Well, that's the case here. Kalik has that mother figure thing because she's Kalik and Toklo both very protective, but in different ways. He's protective in a fatherly way. She's protective in a motherly way. And they both are natural born leaders, and they're both also the bigger ones in the group, the older ones. So they always kind of take care of Lusa and Udrak and think of them as the younger ones who need a lot more taken care of. So in this book, Kalik and Toklo butt heads a lot. Lusa is being plagued by long sleep, which is their version of hibernating, because of the ice and the cold. And they're all worried about her. Kalik is so happy to be back on the ice. She finally feels at home again. So it's kind of clouding her judgment a little bit. And she has to teach Toklo and Lusa and Udrak how to, hunt on the ice. I mean, she had to learn how to hunt on land by herself, but she was able to help her friends hunt on the ice so that they wouldn't have to do that on their own. But Toklo realizes that Lusa can't be on the ice because it's too much danger for her, so he insists that they leave, and Kalik doesn't want to leave the ice now that she's there, and Udrak believes that this is where they have to go through their journey. So Toklo and Lusa decides that they have to leave so that Toklo can protect Lusa, and Kalik wants to stay on the ice and protect Udrak as they continue on their journey. So they separate. And Toklo and Lusa get into some trouble with some flat faces, and Lusa gets abducted. They get like stuck in oil and stuff. So, but flat faces save them, and takes Lusa, and Udrak ends up becoming a flat face too. Toklo ends up finding Kalik and Udrak after on their journey, they realize that. Before Lusa was abducted, Lusa said that they had to return to Kalik and Udrak and that it was right. And then before Toklo finds them, Udrak says that tells Kalik that they have to find Toklo and Lusa because the journey has to be with all 4 of them. So Toklo ends up finding the 2 of them, and tells them about what happened with Lusa. So Udrak decides to transform into a flat face and penetrate the place and pretend to be a volunteer, helping out with these sick animals who got all oily and needs to be cleaned off. And they realize that Lusa is a black bear because at first they thought she was just a white bear with a bunch of oil, but then after they cleaned off the oil, they realized that she's a black bear, and they don't know what she's doing there. And Udrak works Udrak actually starts to kind of have feelings for Flatface there, just throwing that out there. But it's not like that can ever work. But she finds out about him and ends up letting him go, and Lusa as well. Um, and they manage to escape, and were able to, and Lusa and were able to reunite with Lusa and Toklo while they were being forced to wait, and they all escape from the Flatfaces once again, because nothing with their lives can be easy. And that is book 5. Now on to book 6, Spirits in the Stars. So here they end up on Star Island, which is full of white bears. And a lot of these bears have never seen a black bear or a brown bear, so Kalik is the only one that feels natural to any of them. And they don't understand what Kalik is doing with a bunch of other bears. Like I said, they have to constantly defend their friendship by other bears that will never understand. But the leader of the group, I don't know, I do not remember her name. It's like Aga or something. But she said that Lusa was fated to save them because there was this prophecy about Black Bear coming and saving them. Um, because a lot of their bears have been getting sick and they do not know why. Plus, there's Flatfaces that are trying to move in on their territory. So there's all that. um, and there was this dying white bear, and she died, and she had a cub. So Kalik ended up taking care of the cub, and ended up, hiding the cub from the other bears, including the bear's family, because she ended up growing this attachment to Kissimmee. Um, and Toklo didn't like that he kept her, or lied to the bears about her, but still, in the end, was trying to protect her from getting caught and help her with it as well. He took care of Kissimmee a few times when Kalik had to go hunt, and at one point when she was almost caught with Kissimmee, Toklo did everything so that she wouldn't get caught. And Kalik ended up forming this attachment with this one bear, Yukon. He is a white bear, and the two of them started to get romantic feelings for each other. So they're not cubs anymore, but they're still not full grown bears. So these feelings are all new, and it's kind of like they're at the stage we were when we were teenagers. So it's like these feelings are new, they don't understand them, and they don't. But so they start hanging out a lot and get close. Um, they realize that the fish or the seals are poison. Um because there's like the flatfaces are dropping oil onto the water, which is poisoning the seals, which is killing the bears. So Udrak turns into a seal, goes into water, and convinces them to go to fresher water where they can clean themselves off and be better. And it doesn't I think it doesn't it takes a while, but I think Udrak managed to convince them, if I remember correctly. Um, but they realized that they have to stop the Flatfaces, so they decided to try to destroy the oil factory. That was fun. That was a riot. That was insane. Um, uh, they end up tricking a herd of caribou into going and crashing into the oil factory and knocking it down and like breaking it and tearing it apart, and but it kind of backfires because it causes an avalanche, and then Udrak saves Kalik, Toklo, and Lusa, but it causes him his life. Ow, that hurt. But that's so sad. I cry every time I read about that because I love Udrak. He's my second favorite character. My lip hurts now. But I love him so much, and his death always kills me. The three of them were just not ready to let him go, but it was his time, and they find out that he's from the stars. He was like a spirit bear all along, and that's where his mom is, in the stars. So he kind of goes up there, and he says he'll always watch out for them, which he does, which I'll explain in episode 2 of this series where I talk about Seeker's Return to the Wild, because he shows up a lot to help them and along their journey and to look out for them. But they end up having to leave. They saved the bears and they were able to hunt other caribou now until the seals are unpoisoned, and they don't have to deal with flat faces or oil anymore. And Yukon ends up joining the group because he realizes that he doesn't want to leave. Oh, at this point, Kalik ended up giving them Kissimmee. She did that a little bit ago. But Yukon ends up joining the group because he wanted to be with Kalik, but she didn't feel like she belonged there, so she wanted to stay with her friends. So Yukon ended up leaving his entire life to be with her, and they leave Star Island. That is how book 6 ends, how the first arc of Seekers ends. I love the series so much, and I highly recommend it for those of you that have not read it. I highly recommend it. It's just so good, and even though at this point their romantic feelings do start to evolve, like Kalik and Yukon are dating or mating or whatever they it doesn't their relationship doesn't overtake the story, because the most important thing in this story is still the friendship. Even when people start getting romantic feelings for someone, the friendship between these pairs are what's the most important thing. And I love that. I love it. I love the friendship between these pairs. There are many reasons why I love this series, but that has to be my favorite reason, the most important reason, and I love it. So that's all for this video. Please like and subscribe and comment. If you have read the series, if you plan to, and if this video has made you want to give it a try. And I will talk to you guys later. Until next time.